There was once a time where styles of music lived in isolation. Each had its own language, its own look, its own rhythm, and they never dared cross into another's world. Not by choice, but by force. Ruled by a power greater than all of them combined, an infamous tyrant banished every genre to its own sonic prison. That force was electromagnetic waves, but we called him Cheap Radio. For years, genres were kept apart, separated by airwaves, filtered by format, forced to stay in line. But then, everything changed. A new power emerged, one that didn't fear chaos, but welcomed it. To some, a vigilante, a menace to others. This was the great liberator, Spotify. Under this new regime, genres began to trade, to merge, to blend. Metal learned from trap, indie borrowed from R&B, and artists no longer had to choose a side. Together they rose up, overthrowing the gatekeepers and shifting the tide. This is a new musical order. This is the death of genre. Alright, let's unpack that. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any uploads, and also to help us keep putting out interesting videos, such as this. Only a few decades ago, creating music that was easy to classify was a benefit. A pretty large one at that. Packaging your sound into a tight parcel and slapping a label on it made things simple. Easy to identify, easy to market. That was a time when genres weren't a boundary, but a feature. Today, that same label can feel limiting. Outdated even. Because people no longer discover music by genre. They discover it by feeling, by mood, by aesthetic, and more than anything else, by the artist. This whole shift is something I've been fascinated by for a while. When my own music started evolving beyond a single word that I could easily describe, it became difficult to express my sound to a casual listener. And that confusion, that's now the norm. Streaming absolutely shattered the old system, and with platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and the dozen others, people are no longer tuning into a station. They're tuning into an atmosphere. Online services have even taken this into account and completely redefined how they identify various music styles. Playlists are now titled with names like Digital Detox, Scarf Season, Royal Core, and that emotional language is what has taken over. The old question was, what kind of music is this? Now it's, how does this make me feel? Now, we haven't completely done away with the identification approach. It's still useful for sorting and just as an objective means of structuring. But as the genre lines continue to blur, they will become less helpful in predicting an individual's music taste. And honestly, that's kind of freeing. As the world shifts away from tradition, as we're seeing with career paths and social norms, it makes perfect sense that these systems would adjust as well. And in this new system, genre is no longer what binds a fan base together. The artist is. Fans don't follow genres the way they used to. They follow people, personalities, aesthetics, worlds even. For example, a country phase in Post Malone's career doesn't lose the plot. It is the plot, as you're following the artist along an altering trajectory of their career. And as with most modern roads, as you'd likely expect, most of this just leads back to social media. Just 20 years ago, it wasn't the easiest task to keep up with your favorite artist if you weren't seeing them in the news or lurking around their favorite diner. Your relationship with them could really only go as far as the music, along with the little bits of life they've shared within it. Now, you can see what they eat, how they spend their days, even down to the breed of dog they own. That access builds intimacy, which makes the age-old question, what's your favorite genre, feel incomplete. Tastes have stretched into layered, genreless blends that have become difficult but exciting to define. During the radio era, whether you viewed it as such or not, genre was never just about sound. It was a marketing tool. However, it wasn't a tool that directly benefited the artists, but an instrument wielded by the music labels. It controlled who got airplay, who got signed, who was heard. And when you consider the time before the internet, when exposure was quite expensive, it makes sense that distribution companies would want to play it safe and only push music they knew would land with their expected audience. Now that distribution has been decentralized, that pressure to fit the format is rapidly fading. Writers and producers now have the freedom to experiment and explore ideas that might have been deemed too risky for radio. And speaking of musical exploration, if you're a musician looking to expand your genre limitations, I gotta tell you about TrueFire. TrueFire is one of the best music platforms out there. TrueFire has an enormous library of lessons taught by top-tier guitar players, some you may know, across every genre from fundamental skills to advanced techniques. You can use my link in the description to save 50% off of their all-access subscription, and it also helps support the channel. I've personally been using TrueFire to explore new styles, and it has expanded my guitar playing in ways that I truly didn't expect. Go crazy, and big thanks to TrueFire for sponsoring this video. So if genre no longer defines music, what does? As the pendulum continues to swing in the opposite direction, artists are now taking advantage of the leverage they do have. And there's 4 different attributes that I feel tie in heavily to this concept. What comes first is emotion. The feeling behind the music is often the first hook for listeners. Think about how many people say, I don't know what genre this is, but the song slaps, which is a statement I come across often when discussing music with most people. And this isn't surprising. Most of our preferences as humans are most driven by how something makes us feel. And now for the most infamous of the bunch, aesthetic. Sound is now inseparable from visuals, and this boils down to fashion, branding, even track titles. Artists aren't just selling music, they're presenting a mood. Almost like how you can look at an album cover and imagine exactly how the music will sound. And this is what leads into narrative. Every major artist today has a story, even if it's a little cryptic. Listeners want a journey, not just a track. And these narratives don't even need to be obvious. As long as the pieces are there, the audience will put them together in the way they see fit. And from here you get to the final part, and maybe even the most meaningful, world building. Many artists today treat releases like mythical chapters to a story. Each drop adds a new piece to the table, whether it be sound, lore, persona. You're not just listening to music, you're entering a universe. And if you caught my last video, then you already know how Sleep Token is executing this at the highest degree. They're a metal band, a pop group at times, a gospel act, a synthwave project, sometimes all in the same song. But what makes them compelling isn't just the genre fusion, it's the universe they've built around the sound. A masked leader, an ominous dancing ensemble, a cult following. You're not just listening to music, you're practically entering a ritual. And this is a shift that's taking place in the guitar space as well, with many once instrumental acts taking on vocal roles and blending their inspirations into one unique hybrid sound. Now, as I said before, I'm absolutely here for it. Growing up, my music taste was always a little different from those around me. Sure, I vibed with some popular stuff, but I loved niche scenes. Indie, instrumental guitar, ambient blends. On top of that, when I first started producing music, I was essentially taking everything I loved and crafting it into a single sound that I really wanted to hear. People would ask, what kind of music do you make? And I'd hesitate. I'd respond with something along the lines of, I make guitar music, but it was so much more than that. And this was during a time where most people had never heard anything similar to what I was creating. But the scene today has so much range and exposure. And as someone who's never been the biggest fan of labeling art, this is such an exciting time to be making it. The artists who win today aren't the ones who color within the lines of genres. They're the ones throwing out the map and marking out an entirely new route. Genre didn't die because we stopped caring. It died because we started imagining more. If you haven't yet checked out my video on the fascinating spectacle that is Sleep Token, give it a watch and let me know your thoughts. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next time.